Imagine it's 2040 and you're stuck, not just in traffic, but in life, with no car, no affordable flights, no transit, you have no options. You didn't choose this, but you're living in a Canada that quietly took your freedom to move. You've probably felt it too. Life's getting smaller, rents are up, insurance is insane, visiting your family feels like a luxury, and the jobs, well, they're not there anymore where you live. And what if you're not just broke, but immobile too? Canada's own government laid it out black and white, a future where only the rich can move and everybody else stays locked out. And this isn't fear-mongering. This is from a federal agency. Under your current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, the end of mobility is the end of freedom for work, education, opportunity, and escape. You're paying more than ever for less and less movement. If we expose what's coming, we can question it, push back, and prepare. Hey guys, I'm Claudia Ragona. I'm one of the Ragona sisters, and if you're trying to survive, invest, or protect your freedom in Canada, then this one is a wake-up call. This isn't just about transport, it's about power, class, survival, and your future. So let's break it down. In January of 2025, a federal think tank called Policy Horizons Canada published a report called Future Lives: Social Mobility in Question. It was produced under the Liberal government, now led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, a former central banker who took office in March of 2025. The report isn't a prediction. It's a scenario, what the government believes could happen if we stay on current track. And what does that track look like exactly? Well, by 2040, mobility becomes a luxury, not just cars and flights, but opportunity itself. Education doesn't pay off, housing is locked down, and your ability to move up is tied to whether you can afford to move at all. So I'm going to keep it factual. The authors of this report were done by senior analysts at Policy Horizons. The purpose of the report is a strategic foresight to help the government prepare for social shifts. The funding was done with public funds issued under the Liberal federal government. The message, well, this could happen if we don't act. And now that Mark Carney, the man who ran the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, is now Prime Minister. So we must ask ourselves, is this just a scenario or an early playbook? Pierre Poilievre slammed the report as a terrifying Liberal blueprint for collapse.
You only have to ask the department in the government that reports directly to Mark Carney. It's called the Privy Council Department. It's literally the department responsible to the Prime Minister. And quietly, they published a report about what life is going to look like in Canada in 15 years, in the year 2040. And this is what it says, and I'm quoting here. In 2040, upward social mobility is almost unheard of in Canada. Hardly anyone believes that they can build a better life for themselves or their children through their own efforts. And many worry about sliding down the social order. It forecasts more people may struggle to afford rent, bills, or groceries. The resulting stress could worsen mental health challenges. This would increase demand for social services. Then it goes on to talk about housing. In 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many. Inequality between those who rent and those who own has become a key social, economic, and political driver of conflict. Education. It says in 2040, pursuing post-secondary education is no longer considered a reliable path to social mobility. Fewer people choose post-secondary because they see it less as a path to a successful career than a way to reinforce their membership in a so-called elite. That's their words. They say people lose faith in the Canadian project. They say that some of our people will be leaving because it's too difficult to stay in Canada. Again, this is Mark Carney's own government department projecting 15 years hence. It says that many may emigrate to jurisdictions where they perceive upward social mobility and higher standards of living are easier to obtain. If workers leave Canada, it may mean it's harder for us to pay for our older population. And finally, the most terrifying warning of all, and again, this comes out of a government report. It's not some sort of an interest group or a shock journalist. It says that food prices may get so expensive, and I'm quoting here, people may start to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways.
But even the author says, this is just a tool for planning. It's not a forecast and not a dystopia, unless we let it become one. So what does Canada's transportation future really look like? And how close are we already? Jason, transportation is not just roads and rails. It's a huge part of our economy, our jobs, and our daily lives. So here's a closer look. Trucking accounts for 28%. Canada depends on long-haul trucks for almost everything, from groceries, Amazon orders, even oil rigs. So when fuel prices jump or highways jam up, costs can go up for all of us. Rail accounts for 11.4%, and that's essential for moving exports reaching rural areas. But passenger rail is lagging. Via Rail is underfunded, and we still don't have a high-speed corridor or real commuter options. Transit and passenger transport, that accounts for 6.9%. TTC, TransLink, they're all struggling. Air, 2.6%. Flying is getting more expensive and smaller routes are disappearing. In some Indigenous communities, winter roads or charter planes are now the only way in or out. So if trucks stop moving, the shelves obviously go empty. Canadian families basically spend nearly today almost $12,000 a year on transport costs alone, second only to housing. And we obviously know that's not going down. So when we talk about mobility collapse, we're not just talking about inconvenience. We're talking about entire sectors of the economy grinding to a halt. So let's break it down to 3 clear warning zones with emotional and financial gut punches. First, the driving costs have exploded in the last few years. Insurance, look at Ontario's average. Annual premiums are now like $1,800, and it's the highest in the country. Gas, some parts of BC and Ontario, gas is top $2.30 a liter, and one pipeline disruption and prices spike. For many Canadians, owning a car has become a monthly crisis. In Toronto, TTC cut 10 routes and delayed signal upgrades. Ridership hasn't recovered since the pandemic. So what did that lead to? Higher fare hikes and security concerns. Vancouver, the Broadway subline project is delayed again. So let's stop and think about this. If public transit before private transport becomes affordable, then what's left for us? And for millions in suburbs and rural areas, there was never a transport option to begin with. So even cross-country family visits are being skipped. So if the car's too expensive, transit's disappearing, and flying is for the rich, where exactly can the average Canadian go? And how does that shape their future? This is the core warning from the Future Live scenario. When you can't move across your city, your province, or your country, your options shrink, your income shrinks, and your world shrinks. So let's look at a real world example. Let's say you want to attend an out-of-province university. That used to be normal. Now, a cross-country flight with rent in a new city with tuition and deposits, you're pretty much looking at around $15,000 up front. On-campus housing is full, and off-campus rent is brutal, and many students are giving up their top school choices. And it's not because they weren't accepted, but because they can't get there. Mobility shapes education, and education shapes income. You lose one, the other suffers. Canada's job growth is urban, but workers live suburban. A skilled trade might be 40 kilometers away, but without a car, you're basically locked out. And that's what collapse looks like. It's not loud, just limiting. Even if you want to escape Toronto's rent, you'll need a moving truck, your first and last month's rent, a flight or a long drive, which often totals between 10 to 20,000. And seniors who lose their driver's license in rural Canada are isolated instantly. with no bus, no Uber, and no freedom. Mobility is independence. When it disappears, we don't just become stuck, we become trapped. That's what's really happening. High-speed rail from Toronto to Quebec corridor, still in planning after 30 years, and the earliest delivery is 2035, if we're lucky. Meanwhile, Europe has a 300 kilometer per hour rail, and all we have are Twitter threads. So how about electric cars? Well, Canada's target is 100% sales by 2035. But if you look at the 2023 actuals, just 13%, mostly urban, mostly high income, and the charging network, it's still patchy in rural and condo-dense areas, scarce. The grid capacity is unprepared. It looks impressive until you realize 87% of Canadians are still reliant on gas, and many can't afford the switch. How about air taxis? It sounds fun until you realize we don't even have air traffic framework, no affordable rollout plan, not a single Canadian city ready to host these. So who's really getting mobile? Not everyday Canadians, just the 1% flying over traffic while the rest of us wait for a late bus. So let's ask the hard question. Is this a real possibility or just a dystopian fiction? Well, Policy Horizons is clear. This scenario is not a prediction, but it is based on trends already happening. And Stats Can shows children are 32% less likely to out-earn their parents than they were in the 1980s because wages are flat, costs of transport and housing and tuition are rising, and AI is threatening 40% of mid-skilled jobs by 2035. Public trust in government and transportation delivery is at a 20-year low, and this scenario isn't inevitable, but it is possible if we keep ignoring the signals. This report wasn't written to scare you, but to test the system. If voters don't engage, those test futures become real policies. So ask yourself, if we don't fight for mobility now, how much harder will it be to fight later on when we can't even leave? Look, I'm not here to tell you this future will happen. I don't know. I'm here to show you that people inside our own government think they could. And if we don't ask better questions now, the answers might get decided for us. This helped you see Canada's future a little clearer. Don't keep it for yourself. Please share this video, hit like, smash subscribe. This is how we grow the channel and how we make sure more Canadians are asking the right questions before 2040 hits. So if you want more videos like this, deeper, smarter, unapologetically Canadian, help get it out there.